Jason built a garage gym to recover from a devastating crash, but the new HOA president called it an eyesore and hit him with daily $500 fines. Claire Monahan wasn't just enforcing rules, she tried to seize his equipment and publicly smeared his name. What she didn't know, Jason owned part of the real estate firm that bought the lot her HOA needed most. But just wait until you see how this war over one man's garage ended. With the HOA office staring straight into a parking lot they'll never control. Jason Walker had built that gym with his own hands, because he'd had to. 2 years earlier, a driver had sideswiped his motorcycle on an icy mountain road. Jason had spent 6 months in a hospital bed and another year in physical therapy. When he was discharged, his doctors gave it to him straight. If you don't rebuild your strength every single day, you'll lose mobility. Permanently. So Jason had done what any stubborn, determined man would. He converted his 3-car garage into a fully equipped gym, rubber flooring, free weights, squat racks, resistance equipment, everything carefully chosen for long-term recovery. It wasn't a vanity project. It was survival. He chose his home in Maple Ridge Estates for a reason. The suburban Colorado neighborhood wasn't cheap, but its bylaws explicitly allowed personal recreational spaces inside garages. Jason had checked, double-checked, and gotten everything approved by the HOA's former president, Robert Hale, a reasonable older man who'd even encouraged the project, calling it a great example of using your space well. But life in Maple Ridge changed after Robert retired. The new HOA president, Claire Monahan, saw things differently. Claire was a local real estate agent with big plans for the neighborhood. She envisioned Maple Ridge as a high-end prestige community that could command higher property values and bigger commissions for herself. To make that happen, she launched a personal crusade. No home gyms, no RVs, no boat trailers, no cluttered driveways. "This is not a public campground," she often said at board meetings. "We will elevate our standards." Jason wasn't worried. His gym had been approved. It was inside his garage, out of public view, and used only by him. He assumed it was safe. Until the letter arrived. It came on a crisp Monday morning. No warning, no discussion. Cease use of garage for gym purposes. Restore to original function as automobile storage or face daily fines of $500. Jason stared at the words in disbelief. He assumed it was a clerical mistake. Surely they couldn't just reverse an approved modification. He called Claire directly. The conversation lasted less than 5 minutes, but it changed everything. Claire's tone was cold, clipped. "That gym is a commercial eyesore," she snapped. "You're running a public fitness business out of your home. That violates our rules." Jason took a breath and explained patiently. "I'm not running a business. I don't take clients. I don't charge fees. This is my personal space, approved 2 years ago for my medical recovery." Claire didn't budge. "Doesn't matter. Garages are for cars. Period. If you want to fight it, fine. We'll take it to court and put a lien on your property. You've been warned." The call ended. Jason sat there, phone in hand, heart pounding. For the first time since that hospital bed, he felt powerless again. All he wanted was to heal, to live his life in peace. And now, the very community he called home was turning against him. It didn't stop with one letter. By the end of the first week, Jason's front door had become a posting board for violation notices. Every morning, like clockwork, he'd find another bright yellow paper taped at eye level. Fine notice, $500 daily assessment for non-compliance with HOA directives. Final warning, unauthorized use of garage space persists. Notice of intent to lion, action to be filed with county clerk. It was harassment in all but name. Claire wasn't bluffing. She was escalating. The HOA board had voted unanimously to enforce the fine and pursue the lien. Jason's attorney advised him to prepare for a long battle. Word spread quickly. Claire made sure of that. At the next HOA meeting, she stood in front of dozens of residents and declared, "We cannot tolerate property uses that diminish neighborhood value. We've already had complaints. Certain individuals are treating this community like a business zone." She didn't mention Jason by name, but everyone knew. Soon whispers began circulating. "Did you hear? He's running a gym out of his house." Jason overheard one neighbor telling another at the mailbox, "I heard he's flipping homes. That's why the board is cracking down." It was absurd. Jason had owned his home for 5 years. He had no plans to sell. But the narrative was set. Then came the breaking point. One Saturday afternoon, after grabbing groceries, Jason pulled into his driveway, only to find a moving truck parked square in front of his garage. 2 uniformed men were unloading bolt cutters, a dolly, and padded blankets. On the windshield sat a work order labeled, "Seize unauthorized equipment, pending legal resolution." Jason's heart dropped. Through the open garage door, he could see 2 of his barbells already loaded onto the truck. One mover was eyeing the squat rack, tape measure in hand. Jason didn't hesitate. He called the sheriff. Fortunately, the deputy arrived fast. Jason met him at the curb, original HOA approval letter in hand. After a brief conversation and a glance at the mover's questionable paperwork, the deputy instructed them to cease all activity and leave the property immediately. They complied, grumbling as they reloaded their tools and drove away. But the damage was done. Jason stood in the middle of his garage, fists clenched. His private space, his sanctuary, had been violated. And the neighborhood was now watching, sideways glances, quick whispers. The very next morning, Claire sent out a new community-wide email. "We remind all residents that unauthorized gym setups create liability risks. The HOA will continue to correct non-compliance aggressively to protect our property values and community standards." Jason read the message in silence. No more disbelief, no more appeals to reason. His shock had burned away. In its place was something sharper, colder: hatred. He knew one thing for certain now: he wasn't going to back down. Claire had made one critical mistake. She underestimated who she was dealing with. Jason wasn't just an accident survivor with a home gym. Before his injury, he'd built a career as a software engineer, methodical, analytical, patient. And after his recovery, he'd quietly invested in a local commercial real estate firm, holding a minority stake in a company with deep connections and serious financial leverage. Now, that same patience and precision turned to something else entirely: resolve. The first step was legal. Jason hired a seasoned property attorney who specialized in HOA law, someone who knew every loophole, statute, and procedural trap an HOA might exploit. They began combing through Maple Ridge Estate's governing documents, state statutes, and Claire's entire campaign history. In odd ends, it didn't take long to find gold. Claire's garage restoration initiative wasn't just heavy-handed, it was illegal. Colorado property law explicitly protected homeowners' rights to use indoor spaces for personal recreational purposes, provided there was no commercial activity. Even more damning, the HOA's own covenants, signed and still in effect, clearly allowed for non-commercial personal recreational uses of enclosed garage spaces. Claire's campaign was built on sand, but Jason wasn't satisfied with merely defending himself. He wanted to send a message. Opportunity arrived faster than he expected. Through his real estate firm, Jason learned that a commercial lot directly across from the HOA's office building was quietly up for sale. The HOA board had been eyeing that lot for months. Claire had openly talked about turning their aging office, a space used for HOA meetings and occasional community events, into a full-fledged HOA community center, complete with expanded parking and new facilities. Their plan hinged on acquiring that adjacent lot. They were 2 months away from finalizing a bank loan to fund the purchase. Jason moved fast, leveraging his firm's connections and a small network of trusted partners. He arranged a private bid and closed the deal quietly, before the HOA could act. A week later, the sale became public. Jason's firm now owned the lot. At the next HOA meeting, Jason announced his plans with a calm smile. "We'll be developing a high-end parking lot here, for community use, of course, especially for residents who might want convenient parking while exercising nearby." The implication was crystal clear. The room buzzed with murmurs. Claire's reaction was immediate. She called an emergency board meeting to try to block the project, arguing it undermined the community's vision. But this time, Jason wasn't coming alone. His attorney attended the meeting with him, armed with a comprehensive legal packet, including a draft countersuit for wrongful attempted seizure of Jason's property, public records of the HOA's violation of its own covenants, and correspondence showing Claire's personal bias in her campaign. Faced with the threat of legal exposure, potential personal liability, and growing resident unrest, the board caved. The fines against Jason were dropped. The lien was abandoned. The HOA issued a formal statement recognizing his right to maintain his gym under existing covenants. Claire seethed. But now her options were gone. 1 month later, Jason's garage gym stood exactly as he'd built it, fully intact, untouched, and humming with life. The $500 daily fines dropped, the threat of a property lien rescinded, and the final stroke of closure, a formal signed agreement from the HOA stating that they would no longer pursue any enforcement action against Jason or his property for the use of his personal gym. For the first time in weeks, Jason felt at ease stepping into his garage. The familiar clang of weights and rhythmic hum of machines now sounded not just like recovery, but like victory. But that wasn't all. Across the street, the HOA's grand plans for their new community center quietly collapsed. Without the adjoining lot, their expansion dreams were dead in the water. Financing fell through. Plans were shelved. Meanwhile, Jason's new parking lot rose quickly. His firm completed construction in record time, clean, modern, well lit. And at the entrance, a large, tasteful sign greeted visitors. Private lot, owned by Maple Ridge Fitness Partners, LLC, gym-friendly neighbors, welcome. It wasn't just a parking lot. It was a quiet, permanent reminder of what had happened and who had prevailed. At the next HOA meeting, Jason attended without fanfare. He sat in the back of the room as one resident after another stood to question Claire's leadership. Why were so many resources wasted on personal enforcement? Why were legal battles started that exposed the HOA to liability? How exactly did the community center plan fall apart? Claire tried to deflect, but the tide had turned. The board, once solidly behind her, now looked weary. Residents wanted accountability and change. By year's end, Claire resigned under pressure. A new HOA president took her place, pledging greater transparency and community cooperation. Jason never gloated. He never made a speech or sought to humiliate anyone. As he told his attorney over coffee one crisp winter morning, "It's funny. All they had to do was mind their own business. Now their fancy HOA office looks out at a gym-themed parking lot they'll never control." With that, he went home, back to the place where it had all started, to lift, to heal, and to enjoy a hard-won peace that no board meeting could ever take away.